welcome to everyone and thanks for joining our Gather and Grow. We have quite a passionate subject today, how to stay creative in a world filled with distractions. We have two amazing guests that I have the pleasure of introducing very quickly. I'll start with Josh. So he's a senior digital producer at New York Times, and we have Steve, partner at KANE Creative Group. But maybe you guys can take a moment and quickly intro yourselves, tell them your life story in 30 seconds or under, you know?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Josh Eisenman. I started out as a cartographer, graduated college making maps, went to work at National Geographic, got into television, got into digital, got into the .com, fell out of the .com because the .com blew up. Had my own agency for a while, worked with all the agencies around New York City, BBDO, YNR, et cetera, et cetera. Fell in with my friend Steve Susi to Amazon and Ben Myrie, about 6 years there, and then escaped. And now I'm with the Times, and it's a pleasure. Thank you again for having me, Ben and Superset.
Amazing. Thanks, Josh.
Similar story. Started as a junior copywriter way too many years ago to report, and worked my way up through all of the big digital shops in New York City and finding my way to Amazon, where I was the first creative director on the ground in the New York office, and then ultimately went to London as the first executive creative director for Amazon advertising, and it was a total blast. And we're going to talk a lot about distractions and how to defeat them. And I'm going to give you a story that maybe you won't believe about me and Josh being assailed by the authorities in the New York City office, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Thanks to everyone around the world for joining.
Amazing. Great to have you both on. And yeah, thank you again for everyone for joining. Let's dive into the topic. It's quite a relevant and important one. So it's been quite a hectic 2 years, and it's been quite stressful for a lot of folks, not only in the design and creative industry, but anyone that has to apply some creative thinking to their roles. What we've seen is like there's quite a bit of research that decision making and our brain is wired to be quite reactionary when we're under a lot of stress. This can lead to a lot of struggles, also a lot of limitations in our ability to think creatively and do problem solving on the fly. Then this kind of abrupt shift to just remote work has been quite an adjustment to a lot of folks, especially those used to maybe collaborating closely with other creatives, being able to bounce around ideas and just hallway conversations. It's left a lot of people feeling quite isolated and not able to kind of think and problem solve as they used to, having to just survive day to day, kind of Groundhog Day type effect. There's been a lot of monotony and lack of newness just with all this pandemic, living the same day in and out, similar routines. There's also been a study with Harvard that shows like the impact of just sameness and not having the same kind of ability to experience new scenarios has also led to limitations on just ability to think creatively and also problem solve from there. So yeah, it's been quite difficult for a lot of folks on the team, and I think it's we should just fully acknowledge it and then see how we can creatively get ourselves out of it and feeling good about what we do and how we go about it in this kind of new world that we're in. I'll dive through like a couple of ideas on just how to kind of reignite your creativity, and yeah, drop in the comments if there's anything that you guys have found works especially well for yourself and other team members too. The first up, when we first went full remote, I was just kind of in a blank office canvas. It felt like sitting in a blank cubicle. I spent some time just trying to like dork out my area as much as possible, make it my own. That's helped me feel a bit better in just like the space I was in, being surrounded by things that bring inspiration to me. I think it's also a good idea just to set up, stations around your house or around your area so you can rotate around throughout the day. I think we're all used to just running around to a lot of different meeting rooms and seeing people in the hallways, but not staying in the same place day in and day out, making sure that you have some variety to your day. Something as simple as just, swapping out your Zoom backgrounds, doing some fun stuff there can also just help ignite a little bit of fun and variety throughout the day. I think also just an important one is still making an effort to connect with other creatives. I try to have a couple of standing sessions each month with creatives outside of Superside, just to be able to connect and hear their perspectives, what they're going through, be able to bounce ideas and just get new thoughts. It brings a lot of good perspective. Also scheduling offline time during the day, just going through quick morning walks or evening walks, just to kind of reset yourself. You don't want to stay in the same spot, throughout the day, every single day. I think it's also the same kind of mindset for vacation time. I think a lot of people maybe aren't tempted to take vacation time since they're just home anyway, working remote, but it's very important to, rest and recharge. And a good kind of best practice is to schedule your time off in advance with your loved ones. And that way you hold yourself and they hold you accountable for taking that time off. If you're waiting for the perfect time to take it vacation, probably going to be waiting a very long time. Engage in some sort of expressive outlets. I made the mistake of doing some amateur baking during the pandemic. Not the most healthy choice, but doing some painting or photography, something just to refresh the juices can go a long way too. And then lastly, going remote. I think there's a lot of chance where you're bouncing around between Slack, email, multiple tabs, and it's tough to focus on just what you're trying to solve. I don't think that, I think it's important to block off time to kind of dive through each of your tasks. That way you can fully immerse yourself in the activity, the task, kind of get into that flow state where you can just really immerse yourself into coming up with ideas on how to solve something and not be constantly bouncing around and only putting kind of half of the thoughts into your task. But yeah, those are just a couple of quick things from my side, but we have some very smart folks on the call here. I will pass it along to Mr. Josh first.
Again, hello everyone from around the world. I love that everyone's joining from various places, Costa Rica, South Africa, endless spots. So thank you again for having me. I'm here to ask you a life-changing question for me. Do you eat lunch at your desk? 62% of professionals say they typically eat at their desks. 25% of people actively prefer eating alone. In an 87 movie, which I highly recommend y'all go back and watch, called Wall Street, Gordon Gekko on the left, not the other two, famously remarks, "Lunch is for wimps." I personally don't agree with that at all, but whatever. Elon Musk only eats a lunch he can consume in less than 5 minutes. I can understand why he did this when he was with Mr. Bezos. I say never eat lunch at your desk or take any break for that matter. Breaking for a midday meal might have made more sense when laborers toiled with their bodies or tasks building, planting, harvesting, manufacturing that required rest and refueling. But in an economy where the standard task is sitting in front of your computer, lunch is far more optional. I'm not here to talk about overeating and the 3 p.m. death spiral. We all know about that. I'm not here to talk about the health risks associated with staying seated and eating at your desk. Not even here to talk about the sadness of eating alone, sucking a straw, and sucking the screen's rays. I'm here to tell you a story about doing it differently. When I first started in marketing, I worked for a small agency started by a former head of marketing for Seagram's and its portfolio of best-selling brands such as Crown Royal, VO, and Seagram 7. He had built a major career keeping these brands consistently in the lives of an increasingly older demographic. So when Diageo purchased the Seagram brands, they were happy to move them to my boss's new agency and benefit from his and his team's experience. I myself was a tad older than 25. So all I knew about these brands that were that they lived in the back of my grandparents' and parents' liquor cabinets. The dot-com bubble had burst, and in the rubble were small shops with well-heeled connections into brands tasked with helping to drive their business. No longer were these startups offering free massages, foosball, or free cookies. If you remember the Amazon killer Cosmo, you know what I'm talking about. I was recruited by this new Diageo marketing agency because I was the only person with digital experience. Once in, I had to put my attitude in check, learn about and build bridges toward an older generation, which was just starting to pay attention to the new online world. It wasn't until my first month with the company that my true marketing education began. One day, the agency founder, my boss, stepped in to find me chewing a huge sandwich at my desk and working on an activation for Seagram 7. He simply reached over, grabbed the sandwich, threw it in the trash, and said, "If you want to continue working here, I never want to see you eat lunch at your desk again. We are marketers. We need to see, hear, and experience people in order to find the hook. Now get out and come back in an hour." Now, seeing as I was in New York City, the crossroads of the world, I figured I'd stop, observe, and take in to truly understand the customers I was trying to come up with ideas for. I have continued this practice of not eating my desk ever since. Although I did work for a huge company based in Seattle that created a company-like town where I had to make a point of getting on a bus to find people not associated with the company in order to take a break and learn more about larger customers. I resist the gravitational pull of inertia, the screen and the office cafeteria, in order to see and hear the very people we're working to compel with our ideas and solutions. I encourage you to do the same. I broke my tibial plateau about 5 weeks ago and have been homebound and on crutches for nearly 2 months following the 18 or so months that everyone together was homebound. Even with this unfortunate setback, I still make time each day to stop, get out on crutches, observe, listen, and take in what people are doing, buying, talking about, and everything that goes into our creative process. A change of scenery can spark your creativity, ignite your passion, and bring new inspiration to designs and solutions. Anytime you feel uninspired, make it a point to get out into the world, as Mr. Myrie mentioned earlier. As kids, we are admonished to never talk to strangers. As marketing professionals, if we're not talking or listening to strangers, we won't get any new friends for our brands. Always talk to strangers. And it's something I tell my colleagues and teams that I work with every time I see or hear about them not taking a break from their screens. Whether it's for lunch or for an afternoon coffee or tea, step away. Some suggestions: keep the screens off. I know it's hard. Do it, even for 10 minutes. Unplug the AirPods. Listen to what people are talking about. Keep your head up when you walk, look around, or even just sit down and take a moment to observe. Make 3, I don't know, it doesn't have to be 3. Make as many observations as you want, but make an observation every lunchtime or coffee break, no matter how small. Write it down if you can. And as my good friend, Steve Susi, will tell you shortly, find time for deliberate distraction. I'll let him get into that. This is the way you'll get inspired about products, customers, and the markets that will lead you to the information that will lead to the insight into how the market and how to market to actual people living in the world beyond your office door. And as for your competition, you'll eat their lunch.
Yeah, Josh and I used to work together at a company that rhymes with Slamazon, and but in the New York office. And this is creativity and avoiding distractions writ large. So Josh and I got chased by security guards for riding scooters in the lobby. And just like the Millennium Falcon, which barely escaped the closing walls of that planet, Josh and I made it into the elevators. And what would two adult males do but run away and hide the scooters? But a few weeks later, we were asked to move floors. And this is where we really dug deep, and we folded up the scooters and put them in blankets and carried them as if they were babies past those same security guards. And it was that moment when I knew that I was onto something, that Josh is genuinely creative, and we never got in trouble. So I just want to let you know that's creativity in action. But I wanted to start off a little bit with what Josh just finished, which was listening to perfect strangers, even people that you don't even like, which I have a friend that calls that oppo research. But customers are everywhere. You don't even have to like them. In fact, in a later slide, I'll talk about that. But Amazon was a pretty good immersion into customer obsession. People ask, how does Amazon just defeat sector after sector, from a company that sold other people's books, not even their own books. And now, of course, they dominate in tons of different seemingly unrelated business verticals, but they all have one thing in common. There's a customer need that could be better met or just met at all. So in my book, which, by the way, we have a global audience. If anybody reads Korean, you can see it there on the left. For some reason, Korea took to this book very well. But I wrote it at Amazon, everyone's your customer. So not just the millions of shoppers and listeners and viewers, but your manager's your customer, the people that report to you are your customer. And it's intended to create this kind of a bifurcated approach. First of all, it's not about you, and it never was. If you join Amazon, your job is to think of every single person, your mom, the person sitting next to you. Even if you go to a fulfillment center or a call center, everybody there is your customer as long as you're in that building. So listening to perfect strangers is actually the secret to Amazon's success. They started capturing and analyzing data 24 years before everybody else did. And we do that internally with our weekly and monthly reporting, or we did. I shouldn't say do, because I'm no longer at Amazon, but we call this voice of the customer, or VOCs, and our reporting narratives are written where we actually have quotes pulled from actual, texts, emails, et cetera, from clients, from your colleagues. And so that is always the last bit of our reports before we would go into metrics. So it's kind of a humanistic sign off, but you can't go far away at Amazon from the customer. And again, reminding yourself that everybody's your customer. And in fact, the customer freely gives away all the business secrets that you need. So I love, our first office, we were at 56th and 6th in New York, and I used to walk around over to Fifth Ave and back again and listen to people from all different parts of the world talking. I would literally eavesdrop, and I was creepy. And I know this, and it's okay. I'm dealing with it. And the police haven't contacted me for some time. But I would steal ideas from perfect strangers. I would listen to how they talk. I would use that text in my headlines and different kinds of body copy, because the customer is the answer. And so when in doubt, go on that walk, listen to perfect strangers, try not to get arrested. The customer does have those answers. So that was a little bit more of a formal approach to how Josh and Ben both said, get out of the house. But on the next one, so beyond just being a source of just sheer hilarity, listening to people that you can't stand is a great immersion in customer obsession. So if you're in business for brand lift, or if you're in business for revenue, either way, your consideration of who is a mouth breather or a knuckle dragger, and folks from other parts of the world may not understand that, just people that you think are really dumb and stupid, actually learning to love those folks, even though they don't think the way you do, is really, really important to avoiding that distraction, because you're making yourself part of their world. And as designers and writers and even producers, when you understand that empathy for the other is the magic in business. So they help you weed out what really matters from all of this big world of distraction. People who might not have anything in common with you can still love your product. Coal miners can love Ben and Jerry's as much as tree huggers can like that cardboard Amazon box on your doorstep. So just remind yourself, you are not your customer, and they are a guide through that commotion and distraction. Next slide, at Amazon, again, working backwards, starting with that customer and work backwards. The customer is the answer, and their data is just another word for customer. So the point is that you can focus on the customer no matter what you do for a living, and they help reduce the shareholders, the competition, cat videos, if you make it a focus at least one portion of your day to perfect strangers, because they are your customer. Next, we're going to go into if you turn your attention away from an unfinished task, you suffer from what scientists call attention residue. So we try really hard to focus on the task at hand, but the context can often work against us. So the ping of a text message or a shoulder tap from a colleague, or your kids asking why kangaroos have pouches, these things are going to happen. We understand that. So don't fight it. When we attend to these distractions, we can suffer from what is known as attention residue. And that is, over the course of your day, your attention span is watered down. This is natural. This is also why we sleep at the end of the day, because we are basically worn down hour by hour. So when you approach your next task with less brain power, you can't process the information. So we are psychologically and physiologically limited as human beings, and we're terrible at keeping our mind on one track. And that's okay. Understand that. We understand it. Case in point, take a look at your browser tabs. How many browser tabs do you have open right now? So we do this to ourselves. So the next time someone or something interrupts you, before you transition to the next task, and by the way, it's understandable that somebody might come up and say, hey, Josh, I need your help with something. That's going to happen. But they also don't reserve the right to destroy where you are in your thought process, your zone. So ask them to hold on 1 second. You'll take care of them in a moment, and handwrite down what stage you're currently in your process, whatever it is, and what you're going to do when the interruption has ceded, has gone away, what you plan on doing when you resume. So if they have the right to come up and interrupt your zone, you have the right to ask them to hold on for a second and handwrite, don't type, handwrite down where you were and what you're going to do when you resume. This is really important for me, because sometimes I used to be disheveled all the time. Like, okay, where was I? Oh, now I don't have to think. Hold on a second, give me 10 seconds, write it down, writing headline for Amazon, and need to finish body copy by noon. Okay, what do you want? That also sends a message to them that they are interrupting you and you're going to satisfy their request, but it doesn't come without consequence. They have to hold on a second, because it's your idea, it's your zone, they've interrupted it. So write it down, and next time they may be more thoughtful when they come up and just tap you on the shoulder out of the blue. So no matter how busy you are, sometimes try to have 2 email accounts and 2 phone numbers. Like I have a Google Voice number for my side business, and a regular cell for everything else. So what I do is try to really only hand out my business email and my business phone to those folks that matter. And I know if one rings and versus the other, one can wait and one can't. So make sure that you make ready to resume plans a habit when you're interrupted. I find this a great way to avoid distraction actually derailing my thought process. On the next one, there's the reason that shower thoughts are a popular meme. It's our minds continue working on problems that consume our conscious thought, even when we're not consciously focused on them. So in 2012, researchers from Carnegie Mellon found that regions of the brain that handle decision-making are still active when the conscious mind is distracted with a different task. This explains, and I love this list, radioactivity, Velcro, the pacemaker, penicillin, insulin, vulcanized rubber, the microwave, cornflakes, Teflon, super glue, Vaseline, and safety glass were all created when their inventors weren't working on solving this problem. They were completely doing something else, and it hit them. So a relaxed state of mind means high alpha wave activity. And we're more likely to direct the spotlight of attention inward during these moments, toward that stream of remote associations. They say nothing's new in the creative space, only new associations. So the brain actually does this on its own. And so you'll see this dude here, this dude in this comic actually just straps himself to his shower and walks around naked because he knows that that's where his big ideas are going to come from. So we look for ways to take traction away from distraction. And research provides evidence that deliberate distraction actually promotes traction. So it doesn't make any sense. It's seemingly contradictory, but they say that after thinking long and hard all day about a problem, jumping into the shower can turn into what scientists call an incubation period for your ideas. The subconscious mind has been working extremely hard to solve the problems that you face. And now that you let your mind wander toward the end of the day, it can actually surface and plant those ideas into your conscious mind from your subconscious. So this is proven. So here's one for you. Try taking showers at the end of the day instead of the morning, because those 10 minutes could actually be career changers. Your brain has been working hard all day. If you take that incubation period, somewhere between toweling off, shampooing and toweling off, you might invent Velcro or cornflakes. On to the next one. There's precrastination. So a 2014 experiment by Penn State psychologist David Rosenbaum showed hyperdiligence might not be a worthy trait. So his study asked college students to carry a bucket of water to a finish line. Now he had two groups, one with two groups of buckets, same group of kids. There's buckets halfway to the finish line and buckets of water really close to the finish line. Would you know that the majority of the students in this test actually chose the one closest to them and not the finish line? So they just cost themselves all this extra exertion. So people assume that precrastination, or getting things done as fast as possible, and they made the mistake of grabbing a bucket of water and having to run it an extra 10 yards, they didn't realize that it's actually an ultimate waste in valuable energy and time. So one of my old bosses pre-Amazon days said 9 women can't have a baby in 1 month. And I always loved that saying, because there are things you just simply can't shortcut and do properly. So instead of just getting your hands on the bucket as soon as you can, think a little further down the road and actually grab the bucket that's closest to the finish line. Now, I found that setting 20-minute meetings on my calendar for myself every hour and a half allows me to aggregate all the low effort tasks and just do them all at once. So kill all the mosquitoes at once, like responding to emails and voicemails. Take my time to do those things right at once, and then I can go back to my big idea work cycle. And we'll get to more of this in a minute, because there's actually psychological and physiological evidence behind it. On the next slide, you'll see that there's a place called the Information Overload Research Group, which is funny because you got to think that there are people that work there that are probably not obeying these rules because it's just another work environment. So the Information Overload Research Group is probably full of people that are watching cat videos all day long. It's a nonprofit consortium of business professionals, researchers, and consultants, and they report that knowledge workers in the US waste 25% of their time dealing with their huge and growing data streams. And it costs us nearly $1 trillion out of our economy annually, just because of all this wasted time. We are so surrounded by connected machines that they've come to define our physical environment. It's what people call ambient computing. Ambient meaning it's in your just normal surroundings. You look at it at a computer or any form of device as just part of your furniture. We're surrounded by code, but we don't really find much out of the harder we can try to look for insights, we can find ourselves drowning. So this culture of constant connection takes a toll professionally and personally. And we waste time on this relatively unimportant information. And we stay busy, but we're not producing as much value. So there was a Stanford University professor who has shown time and time again, he's no longer with us, unfortunately. He's regularly juggling several streams in the sky, juggling several streams of content We can't pay attention, memorize, or manage tasks as well as those who focus on one thing at a time. Now, Stanford wins a lot of volleyball tournaments. So just wanted to make sure that you knew that. But also we understand that when you find yourself multitasking, you're zero tasking, you're not getting anything done. So understand the data streams are natural. They're not going anywhere fast. But look for the insights, and you can do that by the next slide. Time, as I write in my book, there's the 4 brand currencies of money, information, loyalty, and time. Time is the most valuable because it's the only one that's finite. Last time I checked, the human mortality rate is hanging right around 100%. So because our time on this planet is finite, we often feel the need to check those boxes and to-do lists as quickly as possible, just like those students in the water carrying study. Time and attention span may be finite, but creativity is infinite. So when little things get us distracted, and it's perfectly human, it's not necessarily bad, it's managing distraction. So I always tell people it's not time management, but attention management, because you're gonna get distracted. It's how you manage that distraction. So how do we harness our attention? We're organisms, which means we live cyclically. So you've probably heard of the circadian rhythm, which regulates when we're awake and when we sleep. And you hear about people in Biosphere 3 or in space, they have to be, their sleep cycles have to be kind of synthesized because we don't have that sunrise, sunset, which we enjoy on this planet. But within our waking hours, we have what's called the ultradian rhythm. So there's the circadian rhythm and then the ultradian rhythm, ULTRADIAN, if you want to look it up. These are repeated cycles within 24-hour periods. And according to researchers, there's a basic rest activity cycle. 90 minutes of high alertness split by 20-minute intervals of low alertness. So I've learned that I can go 90 minutes straight without finding a way to purposely get myself distracted by, a funny text from one of my buddies. So can you put 90-minute cycles on your calendar? For most people, that's the ideal pulse for attention spans. And then if you go longer than that, some people can't go longer than 90 minutes. Some people can go 60, whatever, but you will find yourself avoiding those rabbit holes. So set time for rabbit holes, 20 minutes, and learn your creative work rhythm and use it to fight off those distractions. So I can go 90 minutes and then I'm perfectly cool to get up, grab some coffee, get some water, actually go outside for that walk and listen in on Perfect Strangers and try not to get arrested. But 90 minutes, 20 minutes, 90 minutes, 20 minutes tends to work for the vast majority of people studied. On the next slide, you're going to see technologically and ironically, technology can also be your bodyguard. So try personal settings with Feedly for news filtration and Hootsuite filters for your Twitter feeds. So that when you rock those 20-minute low alertness breaks, you can just get your fix, but it's not clickbait and it's not junk. It's something that you've set, you know exactly what to look forward to. And if you do it regularly, it won't pile up, thereby enabling you to not go back down into the depths of distraction, despair. So try to use technology to weed out the junk. On the next slide, speaking of the circadian rhythm, you might be able to sleep and do your work at the same time. Now, I can do this, but it took years for me to figure this out. Some people remember their dreams every morning, and some reason, some people don't. I kind of fluctuate. I kind of go in and out. Like I can go weeks where I remember my dreams and then other weeks where I don't. I don't know. It's probably due to what I consumed in my 20s. But what if we could fend off daytime distractions by ideating without trying? And it gives us back much more time during the day when we're awake using our 90-20, 90-20 rules. So dream hacking is a thing. Look it up, I promise. For years, I always had a notepad and pen on my nightstand to capture ideas before I go to bed. But once, while I was at Amazon New York, I woke up one morning to find a blearily written concept that I had no memory of jotting down. I can't get no satisfaction from the Rolling Stones. That was written in the middle of the night, and what's his name, the guitarist, didn't even remember recording it. He woke up in this dream state and played one of the most iconic musical rock and roll chords ever didn't even remember it. So our brains are working while we're sleeping. And I had no idea that I'd written this concept down, but it was a moment that really changed my career. I realized that the previous night, and this is, you're going to think, wow, Steve lives an incredibly exciting life. I realized that the previous night, my nighttime reading in bed was a huge client brief that was like 12 pages before I turned out the lights. And I influenced my dream to mine that subconsciousness with the last content that I'd consumed. So I repeated this time and time again, both in New York office and the London office, to come up with big ideas, many of which were on the absolute insane side. Like I literally went to Toyota for their new subcompact in Europe. And I'd had a dream the night before that if you put nets across the canopies of massive trees in the Amazon forest, you could actually drive across the tops of the trees. I literally went and presented that because I dreamt about it the night before. If you can absorb for 1 hour before you go to bed all of the facts, rules, briefs, components around a subject, and then you go to sleep, you may just come up with a fantastic idea because your brain is still processing. Also, research suggests that vitamin B6 helps make your dreams much more lucid. So you can try that out. One thing you shouldn't be doing is using a phone or a computer when you do this. Make sure it's paper only. Why? Because blue light messes with your body's ability to prepare for sleep because it boosts alertness and mental sharpness. So keep technology out of the bedroom. The National Sleep Foundation has decried blue light emitting LED devices as detrimental to our sleep habits. So our phones are actively pursuing our grogginess in the morning. So try to keep that stuff outside of your bedroom. Literally don't even bring it in there. If you do it, dim screens at night and keep them at least 14 inches from your face. The aim is to block the release of neurotransmitters that energize your brain. So in short, use a notepad. And if you can dream it, you can build it. Literally try this out, folks. Because if you can come up with big concepts while you're sleeping, and if you have crap handwriting, even when I'm awake, my handwriting is like a headless chimpanzee's handwriting. But if you can read your bleary handwriting in the morning when you wake up, it could change your career. So get that world-changing idea ready. On the next slide, science tells us that one of the best ways to get yourself into a better mood, which enhances productivity, is music. In fact, music can combat stress and anxiety more than actual anti-anxiety medication, simply because of the act of you taking it, you expect it to drop your anxiety, and it may very well drive more anxiety when you take it, as opposed to music, which can put us in a pretty good mood. But stress and anxiety lead to really short attention spans, and that makes us huge targets for distraction. So if you live in a loud neighborhood or a noisy household, music can really shield your subconscious from the intermittent startling of a siren or a dog barking or wondering what your neighbors are arguing about. Those things are momentary, sure, but they're no less distracting, and they can, over the course of your day, exacerbate that anxiety wearing down of your attention span, which again, then look out, cat videos, you're doomed for the afternoon. So there's distraction. You can prevent distraction simply by building a wall or a barrier of sound. Instrumental music gives workers, according to researchers, a boost in how much they can get done in a short amount of time. So, however, music that has intelligible lyrics tend to distract. So my go-to is Spanish classical guitar. It puts me in a mind space. It makes me feel like I'm somewhere south of Madrid. It's one of my favorite countries. It doesn't have lyrics. In second place is reggae. That works best in the wintertime. It does have lyrics, but mostly they're unintelligible to the American ear. And of course, we have folks joining from all over the world. So if you have it on in the background, it doesn't fight with your thought process. And just try it next time you really need to buckle down. Some people I'm a Tchaikovsky guy, whatever it is. I could never have written my book without Spanish classical guitar. I mean, Andres Segovia is like God. He's the man. That would have been absolutely impossible to write a 260-page book without Spanish classical guitar. So if there's any Españols on this call here today, gracias. And then we're going to short in closing. Everyone's your customer. So fight distraction by focusing on the thing that matters most, depending on what you do for a living. Start with that person and work backwards. Write a ready to resume plan the moment you're interrupted. So, hold on a second. Give me 15 seconds. Hold that thought. Write it down, what you're going to do right when you resume. Find time for that deliberate distraction. Some people look forward to the shower in the morning. That's great. But try at night after you've been thinking all day long. Avoid precrastination by setting time aside to tackle the minutia, because the minutia does lead to more minutia. But if you put it in its playpen, you get it done together, kill all those mosquitoes at once. Now you get back to the wildebeest. Break your work cycles into 90 minutes, split by 20-minute cycles of low alert time. Dive deep into content before you sleep, because it can influence your dreams, I'm telling you. And then rock Spanish classical guitar or whatever has no or unintelligible lyrics to help build a mental barrier. That's how I fight distraction, folks.
Amazing. Thank you both. I did try out the Spanish classical guitar, and I gotta say it was at least made the day more entertaining too, at least responding to Slack messages.
Yeah, and I can see you put on a big flowery dress, some caracas, and we're just rolling, man, or maracas.
But yeah, Cassandra, I know that we're getting a little short on time. Do we want to dive into some questions instead of going through the creative exercise?